According to the World Health Organization, a health risk is an attribute, a characteristic or exposure of an individual that increases the likelihood of developing a disease or injury. Examples of important health risks are being underweight, obesity, unsafe sex practices, tobacco and alcohol consumption, unsafe water, lack of physical activity, poor sanitation and hygiene, and the rest. But there are other silent but very important health risks to note, and this forms the basis of our discussion now. What are they? They are loneliness and social isolation. Loneliness is as much a health risk as tobacco smoking. Social isolation is also a major health risk that affects our elderly population. We are talking about beyond taking medicine. For the seniors, the program focuses on the elderly population. Loneliness and social isolation. Both terms are used interchangeably, but they mean different things, although they are related. I'll start with social isolation. It's an objective state where a person does not have enough people to interact with. But loneliness is the feeling or the experience of that state. It's an experience of distress over not having enough social relationships or contact. You can actually have a lot of people around you and feel lonely. That's loneliness. And you can actually do not have people around you and not graduate into loneliness. That's social isolation. Those are the differences. Loneliness characterizes the low quality of social relationships. Although the two concepts are related, but a person can be socially isolated but not feel lonely. Whereas an individual with seemingly large social network can still experience loneliness. Loneliness also should not be mistaken for depression. If loneliness is not about having enough people to interact with, then what causes loneliness? How does it happen? It happens when wrong thoughts about oneself and others, creep into you. Imagine a case where you have a son abroad and, telling his mother in Nigeria that, "Mommy, I don't have anything to do with Nigeria. I don't have." And the mother starts thinking, "Am I not important? Why is he not coming home?" Those kind of thoughts can graduate into loneliness, no matter how many relationships the mother herself has around her. It starts gradually, and the feeling and the experience of that, the woman feels deserted, feels she's not appreciated. She may not say it out audibly, she may not tell anyone, but the thoughts creep in, and as they creep in, she responds to the thoughts, affects the way she thinks, affects her perception about herself and her life's worth, and that's loneliness. That's what we're talking about today. What are the causative factors? What are the things that lead to it? Various factors such as disability, major life events, loss of spouse can put older people at risk of experiencing social isolation or loneliness. There are general approaches suggested on how to reduce this, but this is personal. From afar, you cannot determine the extent to which a senior citizen is lonely. When we mean senior citizen, we're talking about special reference to those above 60 years. We cannot, except to move closer to them and have them pour out their hearts, have them ask questions and answer. That's how we determine these things, and it is largely affecting a lot of senior citizens. A research was carried out recently somewhere around us here, and out of every 100 senior citizens, about 41 of them were socially isolated, and that's a very, very high figure. Let's move on. What are the causative factors? Sometimes people get socially isolated and lonely because of disability, major life events such as loss of spouse. Can put older adults at risk of experiencing social isolation. You should bear in mind that social isolation leads to loneliness, and loneliness also leads to social isolation. The person with limited social contact around him, we say, is socially isolated, and that can create feelings of loneliness and the experience of loneliness. At the same time, someone with a large social contact around him who feels lonely by virtue of maybe circumstances or denial or whatever conditions that have happened can start getting irritable and push away the vital contact around them. People feel things, people feel comfortable with you or uncomfortable with you, and so those internal experiences of loneliness can make people feel uncomfortable because you start reacting and getting irritable around them. So they go hand in hand. You should realize that for many old people, their social contacts or social networks often get smaller For reasons being maybe children have moved away along with grandchildren, aging siblings and friends may have passed away or died. And this happens a lot around us. Who is at risk of being socially isolated and lonely? One, older adults are at risk, and many of them become widows or widowers, especially older women than older men. What are the risk factors for social isolation and loneliness? What are the things that lead to it? Living alone, sometimes health problems and disability, sometimes hearing impairment, they cannot hear well, they cannot see well, and many other things. Life events such as loss of a spouse have been identified as those things that can lead to social isolation and loneliness. But how can we minimize this? Reducing this requires a personal decision. You need to decide that you want to deal with it. You need to pick it on time as a senior citizen, pick it on time and decide you want to deal with it. One of the other ways to resolve this is creating opportunities for social interaction, such as attending programs, attending programs, parties, telephone calls, reduce social isolation. You realize that a lot of elderly ones attend a lot of functions. It's good to attend parties, to dance, to felicitate with neighbors and friends. It helps to reduce the impact of that. And we also realize that many of elderly folks attend religious activities, not just because they are committed to their, to their God, but also they meet people who ask about them, ask about their children, who share the same health challenge, who share the same feeling, who share the same emotional conditions, and they comfort themselves. Those are mechanisms to reduce social isolation and loneliness, the impact of it on the elderly ones. We should also mention that having more supportive relationships leads to decreased death rate. It's been researched that elderly ones who have a lot of supportive relationships are more likely to live longer than those who do not. How? In terms of social network and the extent to which those supports are available. I have children and they are available when I need them to be available. I have friends and when I call them, they pick up their phone. They remember me once or twice a week. All those little things go a long way in reducing the impact of social isolation and loneliness. For loneliness especially, we need to learn new things. This has to do with the mind. The fact that you are old does not mean that's the end of the world. It's the beginning of a new opportunity, not the beginning of the end. So we can start learning new things, learn music, learn dance, learn fashion, learn whatever. You have a long time. You think it's short. No, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years is a long time. You can start learning new things that will challenge your mind, create more opportunities for you within. Especially the word hope creates more hope. You can see people, you look forward to the next day, you look forward to doing assignments, you look forward to learning, new techniques in line with whatever you have chosen to do. We have elderly folks who decided to go study music, at their own level, whether just by a neighborhood or a church or whatever organization. That's a good one. It helps to exercise the mind and reduces the time interval you have to reminisce about the wrong things happening around, about your children that are not around, about those who are not picking your calls or those who are not calling you. Learning new things. Another one is to identify the positive relationships from the past. Look behind you. Look at the people that have helped you. Look at people that have been there for you. Think about those experiences and be grateful for them. That is your self-help strategy to reduce the impact of loneliness on you. Perhaps you are younger folk around who have elderly ones around you. You want to help them. The way to assess if they are lonely is to ask simple questions about their family and friends. You can ask, how often do you feel that you lack companionship? How often do you feel left out of things? How often do you feel distant from others? Those simple questions while gisting will reveal a lot, and you can act on whatever they've told you and make proper interventions. We've had clients that just came in with health issues, and really what they lack was communication from their own siblings, and we've had to get numbers and call their siblings for them, arrange schedule times for meetings in a week, once or twice. They call, times they visit, and that solved a health problem, because being isolated is a health risk. For those who want to assess social isolation, want to know if this elderly folk is isolated, ask simple questions like, how many relatives do you see or hear from at least once a month? How many relatives do you feel at ease with, that you can talk about private matters with? How many of such close relationships can you call on for help? Those questions give a lot. You can even ask, how many of your friends do you see or hear from once a month? How many of those friends are you at ease with, and how many of them can you call on for help? If the answers are negative, that's a red flag. It's a red flag that can lead to worry and other symptoms that we do not need. General interventions. You are an elderly folk listening to me. You have the right to teach your kids to honor you. Teach them to call you. Please place such demands. They are not too much. You may feel that you are being burdensome. No, it is your health need at the time. You falling ill is not good enough, and you can prevent this by telling your kids to place a call through, tell them to check up on you, request to see your grandkids. It goes along. This is beyond what medicine can do. Ask your friends, for help when you can. And when you hear no, it's not a bad answer. You have asked. Always remember that old age is not the end of the world. It's not the beginning of the end. Rather, it's the beginning of fresh opportunities. It's the beginning of a newer level of hope. Healthcare goes beyond taking medicines alone. Yeah, gray hair is prestigious. Gray hair is great. Gray hair is good. We celebrate all the senior citizens we have and wish you a very healthy old age. You need help, you can call on us.